This past month, I made the long drive back to where I grew up in the toenail of Virginia. It's a quiet place where everyone knows each other's dirty laundry because, well, they're stuck in the same gap together. Most of my family still lives there, but I was the one who got out. I used to say that I was fortunate, but the older I get, the more I wonder who really is, the Exeters or those who just stuck it out. I used to think passing strangers who lived on your block was how a neighborhood should work. But the older I get, the more I value in knowing your neighbors' names and where they grew up and all the other gossip that I can get a hold of. I went back for my daughter to visit her people. She has a big family. Some she's kin to by blood, others not. Every time an expat comes to town with a little one, they have to make all the stops. Being a grandparent or a parent and parading your child around is like owning a boat. You love that boat. You cherish that boat. You think it's the best boat in the world. But when someone says, "Oh, that's the cutest little boat," you have to reply, "Well, thanks. But it's just so much trouble and it's just always sputtering. I tell you, it's a lot more work than I thought I was signing up for." When all you really want to say is, "I know, isn't she the cutest little thing you've ever seen?" But can't say that. You have to downplay it as much as possible. Not a big fan of all the oohing and ahhing of babies, so I left that for the grandparents and caught up with my cousin. He's the one that tried to get out, but begrudgingly he ended up staying. He's the pastor of the Last Baptist Church in town, and that's the name, Last Baptist Church, not the description, even though it's the only one that did survive. Matthew's preaching on Luke 12, the parable of the rich fool, about a man who had an abundance of crops, so much that he didn't have anywhere to put them, so he tore down all his barns and built new and bigger ones to store it up for himself. And he didn't even make it to the next day. Matthew hasn't decided how he will illustrate it yet, but this week's been a little busy for them because they did have a death in the family this week. His younger sister Joan, their family cat Whiskers, died unexpectedly this week. Matthew has 3 siblings. He's the oldest. There's Matthew, then Mark, then Luke, and then Joan is the youngest. This is the first time their kids have had to deal with death, so they've had to figure out how to navigate it. At first, Joan's kids asked if they could cremate the cat. Her oldest said that she heard from a friend at school that they had cremated her grandmother, so she wanted to do the same for the cat. Joan was on board and said she would until she realized it was going to cost $200. So instead of breaking the news to the kids, they just buried Whiskers out back and then pulled some ashes out of the fire pit. Matthew came over and officiated the funeral for Whiskers, and then the kids wanted to bury the ashes out back. Forgetting where they actually buried Whiskers, they dug a hole until they started to dig up some pieces of hair from their cat, and that's when they offered to bury Whiskers in the lake. About then we passed my old babysitter Pearl.
Get on off my yard! I tell you, the next time I see you kids on my grass with them bikes, I'll be waiting with the hose. Don't you laugh at me. I know where you sleep, Tuckaboon. Don't make me come over there late at night when you're all tucked in. I sick Rusty on you, and he ain't had his rabies shot in 3 years. Oh, hello, Retta. Sure is dry. I don't think it's ever going to rain again. Every time I walk through the grass, it crunches under my feet. Ain't heard a crunch like that since the last time Earl had me walk on his back. Never asked me to do that again. Loretta, what you think about that Ryan Seacrest boy taking over for Pat on the wheel? I just don't know what to think about it. There's only ever gonna be one Pat Sajak. Oh, I guess I'll give it a try, but I tell you right now, it ain't gonna be the same, never. Hell, I cry every night when I see reruns of Pat. Oh, that was Earl's cousin Barbara's car that was in our driveway. They were staying with us for a while. You ain't gonna believe this, but her husband Clayton won the lottery 2 weeks ago. You see, he got addicted to them Snickers again. Yeah, a few weeks ago, he was on a real bender, and that day it got up to 97 degrees. He was feeding his habit with a Snickers and a Coke. So he bought a couple of lotto tickets while he was there, and darned if he didn't hit the jackpot. The first thing he wanted was to buy a new house. So they put all their stuff in a storage container, rented a bulldozer, and tore down that house. Sure did, all the way to the foundation. Then, the next day, he went to cash in his lotto ticket, and when they scanned it, nothing came up. He said they must have scanned 20 times. That's about the time he brushed his thumb across the ticket and, sure enough, wiped away 3 bits of Snickers. Those 2 8s were really 3s and the 6 was a 5. Yeah, it's wild, I tell you. Anyway, they didn't have a house yet, so they stayed with us for a week, and now they're at my sister's place. You can't bake a cake before cracking the eggs, you know what I mean? Oh, all right, let me get on in here and do something. Oh, boy, you better stay off my yard if you know what's good for you. Let me get Rusty all ready. We fed him mushrooms for dinner, and you know what that does to his bowels.
So Matt's not sure what he'll talk about when it comes to the parable of the rich fool, but hopefully he'll dig something up.